Indie horror games. Yeah, they fucking suck. Indie horror games are something I seem to constantly come back to like a moth to a flame, and just like a moth to a flame, I'm constantly getting burnt. Before I was known as the Jeffy's Infinite Eye Data guy, yes, I get it, please shut the fuck up about that, I was known as that one shit-faced loser who looked at indie horror games. Sometimes good, most of the time shitty. It's no secret to anyone that indie horror games in the last few years kinda suck a lot, especially when compared to their older counterparts from years gone. And it's not like a generational thing where the older generation is hating on the newer one. No, the quality has just taken a nosedive quite a bit. So we've gone from absolute bangers like Spooky's House of Jump Scares, Night Blight, Boogeyman, Bad Dream, Tattletale, Emily Wants to Play, and so many more, to nowadays with games like fucking Garden of Bang Bang, Huggy Wuggy's Gangbang Power Hour, Gay Ass Friends, and of course, who could forget, Secret of the Retcon. Indie horror games usually fall under one of three categories. One, they're completely fucking terrible. Two, pretty good, but they have an awful community. Or three, it's only made as Gooner bait or is only enjoyed by Gooners, for all the wrong reasons. And guess what fucking indie horror game series falls under all three of those categories? But I'll save my qualms for that series for a little bit later in the video. This video is probably going to be a bit of a mess, as I'm just going to be rambling about a bunch of fucking really bad indie horror games, so yeah. Speaking of which, why don't we jump into it? Also subscribe if you're not a fucking cunt so I can reach 100k. Okay, love you! It's kind of hard to start with a specific point when it comes to bad indie horror games because, quite frankly, despite the indie horror games renaissance of the early 2010s, even that time period wasn't free from shitty games. YouTubers like Markiplier are pretty good documentations of past indie horror games, as Mark has well over 1,000 videos of him playing different indie horror games, especially in his early career. Even those were kind of forgivable, as they seemed like more first projects from new developers compared to the new indie horror games that just suck due to them either being instant cash grabs or made by incompetent people. I guess that's a starting point. The quality of new indie horror games stem from mostly those 2 points. Either they were made by incompetent people, or they were made as cash grabs thrown onto Steam for a quick buck or two. The one trend among indie horror games that you may notice are the very strange decisions made when it comes to either gameplay, story, or mechanics. And no other indie horror game embodies this more than Poppy's Playtime. Poppy Playtime is a game I've kept my eye on for quite some time, and a judgmental eye at that. You'll tend to notice that my opinions of indie horror games is decided by a few factors. Obviously, 1, quality, 2, gameplay, 3, the people who make it, and 4, popularity. The first 2 are pretty self-explanatory. If the game is bad, I hate it. If the game has bad gameplay, I hate it. If I don't like the people who made it, I hate it. But it's the last one that's specifically going to tilt people. I am very much a hater of trends. If something's popular, I'm most likely not going to like it, just because of that. Mostly due to when things do get popular, it's made popular by annoying people, especially in the world of indie horror games, and Poppy Playtime is a prime example of that. More specifically, content farms. A good chunk of titles I'm going to be talking about in this video share the same fate of being milked by content farms, then thrown away like an old sock once the well has dried up. The game itself is just also not very interesting. I watched all of Corey X Kingston's videos on the game because Corey is the only person in the world who could make something like Poppy's Playtime stomachable. But even then, I had to sit through fucking 6 hours of Poppy's Playtime, and I'll never be the same again. It's like taking fuck. It's like taking 80 milliliters of cough syrup. It starts to do stuff to you, man. The original game, aka Chapter 1, is decent enough, but following the release of Chapter 2 and onwards, I kinda lost interest. Not that I had much interest in the game anyway, but whatever. It kinda falls under the indie horror game slop category of walking around, listening to a bunch of bullshit, and then doing really terrible puzzles. It's kind of a formula at this point, and I think Poppy Playtime might have started that trend. I don't really know. I didn't really know much about the game before working on this video. The most I knew was the early controversy because of, you know, who made the game. Quite frankly, I don't remember the full extent of what happened. Honestly, it's just one of those videos I had in the background while playing TF2 one day. Now, originally, before writing this part of the video, I thought this would be a somewhat controversial take, but no, it seems like a lot of other people don't like this game, and I'm not surprised why, because, again, it's just slop and nothing really more. It's kind of similar to another game, Garden of Bang Bang. I swear to fucking God, if I get a comment saying, "Oh, it's not Garden of Bang Bang, it's Garden of Banban," I'm going to fucking kill myself. This is another indie horror game that kind of doesn't... I'm so sorry. That was such a fucking drastic tone. Oh, God. That was such a drastic fucking tone change. This is another indie horror game that doesn't really need an introduction. It also can't really be called an indie horror game because look at this shit. What is horror about this? Maybe the fucking awful graphics, but other than that, this shit ain't scary. And somehow it's gotten even fucking worse since last time I looked at it. Against my will, of course, but still. And apparently there's now 8 mainline games. This is also a pretty well-known game that I don't have to explain why it's bad. I mean, just look at this. Just look at what's happening on screen. What the fuck is this? It's also another game with a really bad reputation for obvious reasons. From awful graphics, awful gameplay, and, you know, the most infamous thing, that being the fucking polygon count. That's honestly the scariest part about these games, is how many fucking polygons each of the models use. I'm not even a model, even I know this is absolutely terrible. Garden of Banban is another one of those games where you walk around, listen to stupid bullshit lore that makes zero sense, kinda like another game we're gonna discuss later, but again, I'll get to that later, then do shitty puzzles, just like Poppy Playtime. Except with Poppy Playtime, at least the visuals were, you know, pretty good and not complete eyesores. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of that for this game, nor its sequels, or their sequels, or their sequels, or those sequels, or the ones after that. Did I mention there's 8 mainline games? This was kind of a joke back when I was first made aware of this awful series. Back then, there was only 3 games, and all they really were carbon copies of each other. And now, after a year later, there's 8 fucking games, and they're all still carbon copies of each other. Like, generally, how could someone even like this stupid shit is far beyond my understanding. Oh my god, I can't write scripts like this anymore. I can't understand what I'm trying to say, because it makes no fucking sense. Oh my god. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on games like these because, well, you already know these games suck, why they suck, and why they're such eyesores to fucking look at. The models are terrible, the game is terrible, the people who make the game are terrible, the people who play the game are terrible, the content farms are terrible, it's just not a good game at all. Now, Garden of Dogshite and Poppy Sue You Into Oblivion are 2 games that I would place under the just flat out terrible category of games. But what about good games that have terrible communities? Well, why don't we talk about the poster child for this category, Mouthwashing. Mouthwashing is a game that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time, because unlike every other indie horror game released after 2020, it doesn't suck ass. It's so dumb. It's so fucking dumb. I can't do this shit. Because unlike every other indie horror game released after 2020, it doesn't suck ass. In fact, it's pretty damn good. I generally think Mouthwashing is probably one of my favorite indie horror games, not only in the last few years, but quite frankly of all time. If you're watching a video about indie horror games, hopefully you already know about the plot of Mouthwashing, but if you don't, I'll break it down real quick. Mouthwashing is a game about a small crew of space freighter workers stranded in the middle of space after supposedly the captain went crazy and crashed the freighter. Mouthwashing is a horror game that focuses more on the story and atmosphere than actual gameplay, because in reality this is just a walking simulator, but the story it does lay out is really good. That's not to say it's the best indie horror game story out there, but it's still better than something like Five Nights at Freddy's that's constantly retconning and making random bullshit up just to fit its broken lore. Oh boy, trust me, we're gonna get there when we get there. There are some very trippy visuals in Mouthwashing, especially when paired with the PS1 style graphics. It definitely makes for an interesting experience. That also has a pretty good plot twist too, some good writing, and overall is just a pretty good indie horror game in general. However, it wouldn't be in the video if that's where it ended. You know, if you take a look at the video, you know we're not here just to talk about good indie horror games. While Mouthwashing itself is a really good indie horror game, the same cannot be said for the community surrounding the game. I'm not gonna go in depth with this, because honestly, I don't really give a shit what a bunch of schizophrenic cunts on the internet say, or do really. But to make a long story short, there's one character in the game that's been pretty controversial, that being the co-pilot, Jimmy. Not only is it later revealed that Jimmy crashed the freighter and not Curly the captain, but he also kinda maybe sexually assaulted Nurse Anya, who later tells Curly that she's pregnant. You could probably imagine this kind of caused a bit of an uproar, but for all the wrong reasons. People got mad at others for making all 34 of Anya, some people started attacking Overs. They attacked overs. They attacked overs. They attacked overs. They attacked overs. That's a fucking sentence, yeah! Oh my god, I'm having a heart attack over here. Holy fuck. People got mad at others for making R34 of Anya, some people started attacking others over not sharing the same opinions, some called Jimmy one of the worst characters in all of fiction, completely ignoring the fucking huge chunk of some of the worst, horrible, and depraved sickos that fiction has delivered upon the human race, and no, I'm not talking about that one clearly satirical video. Motherfuckers deadass started censoring his name. I just unironically used the word deadass. I swear to God, I'm going to fucking kill myself. Like, I see that shit on the internet all the time with people like Trump and Musk. I get it, seeing and saying their names gives me an itch in the back of my throat only as 12 gauge could scratch, but like, unironically censoring their names is really fucking cringe.
Oh no, القرينج.
I already know some twat in the comments is gonna be like, oh, this guy says the word fuck like 387.44 million times. To sum up this whole situation, it basically boils down to the really stupid argument of man bad, which is so fucking stupid. I get as a man, it's like, of course you would disagree, but also, it's a fucking video game, it's just polygons and pixels, this shit does not matter, it's not fucking real, dog. And that was Mouthwashing. There's a bunch of other games that I think are pretty good that kinda have a shit community surrounding them. Fnaf is not one of them, but again, I'll save that until later. We now arrive at the last category. The Gooner category. Games made by Gooners for Gooners and are only enjoyed by Gooners. And no other game, I think, embodies this category more than the Coffin of Andy and Leyley. An RPG horror game about two siblings dumped in the middle of a random hotel by their MILF of a mother who eventually ends up killing and eating their neighbor. Cool. What about the game itself? That's such a fucking horrible way of describing it. What about the game itself? Honestly, I don't give a shit because it's an RPG, which means it's automatically the worst game ever. But that's not why it's here. Of course, no, my dear viewer. It's all about the gooning, brother. I expect very little people actually give a shit about the game itself, and only enjoy the game for the women characters. I would say I don't blame them, but again, it's an RPG, so it's a pretty shite game automatically, but also I'm kind of a little gay. The Coffin of Andy and Leyley, additionally, is pretty infamous for, well, incest. Now, I'm not here to quote-unquote defend the game, but people massively blew this out of proportion. It's one ending that the game itself says is bad, and in order to actually get it, you have to, actually try and get it. It doesn't help with the fact that the creator of the game told people who called him out about this to, quote, cry about it, unquote. This was obviously just him trying to ruffle some feathers, and clearly it worked like a charm, which may or may not have led to him getting doxxed. Anyway, the whole situation is a shit show, kinda like the game itself, and I'm pretty sure it's been cancelled or been put on the back burner for now. But again, the only reason why people even really pay attention to this game is because they like to choke it to R34 of the characters, which mostly is between Ashley and Andrew, the siblings, or Andrew and his mom, so that's real fucking kosher. There's a few other games I want to talk about very, very briefly that don't really fit into one of these categories that just, I don't know, simply exist. Those two games being No, I'm Not Human and Not My Neighbor. Two games that aren't fine enough, but the main reason why I want to talk about them is because both of them just kind of blew up for, I don't want to say no reason, but for a baffling reason. A reason I don't understand. For some reason, these two games have a really dedicated fandom, and I don't know why, because, like, not to be rude, but what is there here to warrant all this fan content? Not My Neighbor is just horror papers, please, and No, I'm Not Human is just horror where's Waldo. And I don't really like Waldo after that motherfucker kicked my dog. Again, not too much I want to talk about with these two games, I just want to bring up the fact that they're kind of baffling how they got so big, but quite frankly, there's nothing too special here. Right, now that we got all those out of the way, I think it's about time we talk about the three big ones. These three games don't necessarily fall under any of these categories, besides one of them falling under all of them, but the other two kind of have categories of their own. These are the three games that I actually want to talk about for this video. Those games being Five Nights at Freddy's, Hello Neighbor, and Bendy and the Ink Machine.
Come on, just give it a try. All right, maybe just a little. Bendy was a little devil thing who was brought to life on the silver screen.
Let's tackle the, I'll say, most controversial one first, that being Bendy and the Ink Machine. I want to preface by saying I don't think Bendy and the Ink Machine is a bad game. It's not. But to me personally, I think it could have been a lot more. In the thumbnail of this video, I had Bendy wearing a shirt that reads Wasted Potential on it, and that's because that's really just sums up my opinion of Bendy and the Ink Machine. To me, I feel like it could have been something more, something bigger. The gameplay for the most part is fine enough, with the exception of the later chapters kind of teetering a bit with quality. Personally, maybe because I wasn't really into Bendy as much as Hello Neighbor or Fnaf, but I kinda wanted something a lot more. Something to me was missing about this game. This might be a hot take, but I think Joey Drew Studios should have gone the same route as Five Nights at Freddy's, with a bigger scope, something more grandiose, because what's here feels so tight and compact. The story feels so one-sided, like all the characters are connected as one. The ending also leaves a lot to be desired. Now, I know other Bendy games have come out since, but I'm more specifically referring to the original Bendy in the Ink Machine, Chapter 1 through 5, because quite frankly, I have not been paying attention to this series at all, and I don't really want to bloat this video any more than I already have. Let me say this again, I don't think Bendy in the Ink Machine is a bad game, far from it, but there's just something about it I can't put my finger on, something I don't like about it. It's like a hammer hitting me in the head, constantly nagging at me, and I just don't know why. I think Bendy in the Ink Machine's strongest aspect is the idea and design. The idea alone, when I first saw Mark's video about the game, sold me, and the designs are generally really great. I mean, the full aesthetic of the game is really, really pleasing to look at. From the intense use of brown, to the hand-drawn looking graphics, to even the idea of 1930 cartoons. It's also pleasing to the eye. But again, as I stated multiple times, I kind of wanted something more from this game. The problem is, I don't really know what I want from it. With both Hello Neighbor and Fnaf, I knew exactly what I wanted from them. Hello Neighbor needed a better direction, and Fnaf needed to stop punching me in the fucking taint, with constant lore changes and retcons. The dumbass direction Scott and Steel Wolf seem to be dragging Freddy and the gang into is just one giant blue balls disaster. Bendy and the Ink Machine just doesn't have a good enough payoff in order for me to fully enjoy it. Maybe Bendy and the Dark Arrival scratches that itch, but I don't really know, as I haven't touched anything Bendy in like 5 years, so I guess I'll have to wait and see. Also, this game barely passes as a horror game, so yeah. Speaking of the other games, let's talk about the biggest disappointment in indie horror, Hello Neighbor.
Why can't you accept your fate as my Woody? You made me upset when you called me a pedophile. That's what you called me last time you stormed out. I was upset!
Hello Neighbor is just so sad. I don't think I need to explain what exactly happened to Hello Neighbor. It's kind of one of the most infamous things to come out of indie horror in general. It started as a promising indie horror game, and then it turned into a complete shit show. Same thing with its sequel, and probably its sequel too, which kinda really sucks. Hello Neighbor was probably the indie horror game I was most hyped about. I was there every time a new alpha came out. I still remember seeing the very first release of Hello Neighbor, and how scary and smart of a concept it was. Having an enemy that learned and adapt from your decisions and mistakes. But as more alphas came out, it kinda became very apparent that what made the original few alphas special was kinda being lost, especially when Alpha 4 came out. Pre-Alpha and Alpha 1 are still probably the best versions of the game, and it's not even a close competition. While Alpha 2 is decent enough, Alpha 3 and Alpha 4 just kinda fell off heavily, especially leading into the actual full release of Hello Neighbor, which again was very disappointing to see. It was very rare as a child to have something I was excited about in the indie horror space more than Five Nights at Freddy's. To me, Hello Neighbor was something special, and it turned out to be a complete disappointment, to the point where I didn't even watch any YouTubers play the full release of Hello Neighbor. My first experience with it was much later with Pastra's video, which inspired me to make my own video about it. When I made the original video about Hello Neighbor, my opinions on the game were quite harsh. The original video was titled The Good, the Bad, and Ugly of Indie Horror Games, with obviously Hello Neighbor falling under the bad category. However, since that video released, I've kinda had an 180 flip on my opinion of it. Don't get me wrong, Hello Neighbor is still a complete mess, but honestly, I love this game. While yes, it's very flawed and very messy, it's still a really fun indie horror game to go back and play from time to time, even though it's not really a horror game, because like most indie horror games, the horror aspect just kinda gets lost after a while, or in some cases are not even there to begin with. Hello Neighbor is kind of one of those cases. It's not very scary, it's too colorful and nonsensical to be scary, and personally I haven't considered Hello Neighbor a horror game since like pre-alpha, where the colors were all lot more muted. Also, did you know lemons are not naturally occurring fruits? Despite all the flaws Hello Neighbor has, it's still a really fun game for the most part. Sure, it's still broken and frustrating at times due to, quite frankly, borderline retarded ass game design and decisions, but it's still fun to go back to every once in a while. That's not to say that it's not bad, because it is. A game doesn't have to be good in order to be fun. It can be fun for different reasons, and Hello Neighbor is that type of game. Yes, Hello Neighbor is very much a horrible game, but in a way, that's why I like it. The puzzles may not make sense, the game might be buggy and sloppily thrown together, but there's just this weird charm to it that keeps pulling me back. I still wouldn't recommend Hello Neighbor due to, again, really bad gameplay and frustrating puzzles with absolutely no explanation, but it's not a game that I regret buying or playing, because quite frankly, I'm an enjoyer of terrible things. Clearly. Hello Neighbor feels like Tiny Build just threw it together. Every idea feels like the developers threw something at the board and see if it would stick, then none of it sticked, then they decided to throw whatever they had laying around into a $30 game and release it. The best way I can describe Hello Neighbor is when you have nothing to eat at home, so you throw everything you have in the pantry and see if it works. Just in this case, it never does. The problem with Hello Neighbor is that it's such a mental slog to get through, especially during the second half of Chapter 3, where you have to start collecting power-ups. That's just stupid, like, beyond stupid. I hate doing it. It's the worst part of the game. The puzzles are also pretty bad, primarily being the sun and moon doors, mostly due to them, like, the rest of the game being buggy as fuck. That's probably the main reason why Hello Neighbor is so bad, because the puzzles suck, and that's kind of the main part of Hello Neighbor, is the puzzles. Now that I think about it, Granny is just a better Hello Neighbor. It's scarier, it has better puzzles, it actually feels satisfying to beat, like my meat. That's so dumb. I forgot I added that. It's just overall a better horror game in general. Although, despite that fact, I'd rather play Hello Neighbor more than Granny because, well, oh yeah, ruined it for me. I still think Hello Neighbor has some potential that its sequel Hello Neighbor 2 does not utilize. So let's hope that Hello Neighbor 3 can finally break the cycle and be an actual good game, because Jesus Christ, we need a good Hello Neighbor game. Please.
Guys? Is this Freddy Fazbear? Arr, 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 arr. Arr, 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 arr.
Oh boy, so now that we've covered both Bendy in the Ink Machine and Hello Neighbor, I guess that means it's about time we discuss the last one, and what else would it be but Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh man, Fnaf sucks. I don't like it. Fuck. Fnaf sucks. I don't like it. It's quite bad. Fnaf is a game that needs literally no introductions. If you know anything about indie horror game, you know all about Five Nights at Freddy's. They go hand in hand like toilet paper and shit. And that's the best way of describing the franchise's quality of late. Now, I'm gonna keep this very, very brief because, quite frankly, I'm going to make an entire video on why this fucking franchise sucks. But for now, we have to contain it in a small little bubble so you know it doesn't erode everything around it like a fucking nuclear blast. The quality of Fnaf games over the last, Jesus Christ, 11 years, has taken a nosedive so bad it makes Flight 93 jealous. I'd even bring into question the quality of the originals, if it wasn't for the fact that it was one person making the entire thing. But once it gets to sister location, that kind of gets thrown out the window. But honestly, I'm mainly talking about the more recent Fnaf games. The others don't really fit the topic of this video, kinda. There are two eras of Fnaf games, the first one being the Scott era, which is Fnaf 1 through Ultimate Customite, and the Steel Wool era, which is VR to current year, and honestly they're both two completely different beasts. One just smells worse than the other. One was slightly good and one is absolutely atrocious, and I think you can assume which ones I'm talking about. Help Wanted is overall a pretty decent game, all things considered. It was the first time the Fnaf IP had been handed to someone else. While sure Scott still worked on the game, it was mostly Steel Wool doing the heavy lifting. Again, the game was fine enough, it had minimum problems that weren't too disruptive to the entire experience overall. pretty decent. It's also kind of cheating because it was based off the already existing Fnaf game, so it was pretty hard to mess up. While sure they still had some originality in some of the minigames, it wouldn't be until 2021 where tcoaal would be able to deliver something completely of their own accord. That game, of course, being Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. One of the absolute worst fucking games I've ever had the displeasure of viewing / playing. It's no secret that Security Breach is bad, it's just not good. Disregarding all the bugs and glitches, it's just not very good by itself, even. With all the patches and fixes and DLC in the form of Ruin, it's just not a game that can be saved. It also quite frankly ruined a lot of the Fnaf franchise by simply existing. It completely fucked up the lore that we already knew. The whole project, from what we heard from the developers, was entirely mishandled due to Scott not really communicating with the team. But also, a lot of it just has to do with the game itself and not just the gameplay. It just sucks in general. Some of the decisions that were made make absolutely no sense, and overall, it's just an absolutely terrible experience. Which then leads us to Help Wanted 2. Again, just like the original, it's decent enough. It being VR definitely helps with that. VR games are just naturally pretty cool. There's nothing too outrageous or, how I say, atrocious present in Help Wanted 2. Again, like the first one, it's a pretty decent experience. Then comes the big one. Leading up to the release of tcoaal's next game, a new character had been introduced in Security Breach's DLC, Ruin. Ruin itself is okay, better than the base game itself, but within this DLC, we are introduced to a character named the Mimic. And it's with this single character that completely shattered everything we knew about the Fnaf series up until this point, which got even worse with the release of Secret of the Mimic. I don't even know how to put into words my disdain towards this game. This game alone fucked up the entire Fnaf timeline and everything we knew up until that point. I think, because again, I haven't been into the series since like the 6th game. But returning to Fnaf, going into this pile of slop in front of me was definitely an experience. Not a good one, but an experience nonetheless. I think one of the worst things Secret of the Mimics introduced... Mimics? Oh yeah, I'm not surprised if there'd be fucking multiple mimics, because everyone fucking apparently is the Mimic. I think one of the worst things Secret of the Mimic introduced is the existence of Edwin Murray. From what I've gathered, Edwin Murray was an engineer contracted by Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, owned by Henry Emily and William Afton. Turns out, Henry Emily and William Afton were not the creators of the animatronics or even came up with the idea of the characters. That was dick-faced Edwin over here. Never once throughout the entire franchise have we ever gotten a single hint towards the idea that Henry and William were not the original creators of not only the animatronics, but the characters as well. There is nothing in the entire franchise to even hint towards this. We were never given even an idea that Henry and William were not the original creators. It's so mind-boggling stupid how many retcons and fucking rewrites this clearly professional written story has gone through, as so many of people on Reddit would want you to believe. Quite frankly, I don't think Scott has a comprehensive story even made. He's just throwing shit together and hoping it sticks. Scott kinda sucks. I don't like Scott. He's fucking rude. He sent me a pipe bomb in my mail on behalf of goddamn Lewis Dawkins, that British cunt. I'm not gonna lie, it was with the release of Security Breach that really put me off the series, I'd say for a good while, and it was the release of Secret of the Mimic that really put me off the franchise entirely. In my opinion, up until the release of Secret of the Mimic, the Fnaf series had seen a decline in quality so bad it should be fucking studied. Again, this is a small snippet on my opinions of the Fnaf franchise, as I want to keep it as short as possible because this video is long enough, and secondly, I'm going to make an entire video about this godforsaken series. It seems like the quality of the franchise is continuing to take a nosedive with the recent release of the 2 Fnaf movies. Look at this shit, dog! Who likes this? Get this fucking shit out of my face! Wow, this video went on longer than I expected. Indie horror games kinda suck balls. Some of them are good, most of them are fucking dreadfully atrocious. Some are fun, and some make me want to pulverize my testicles with a blender, then replay again. Because, Jesus Christ, some of these games are so fucking bad, they make me cry harder than when Scott Coffin mailed me a pipe bomb, let alone threaten my own balls like that. I have nothing else to say, so fuck off. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Feels satisfying to beat, like my meat. That's so dumb. I forgot I added that.